The only times I've had dealings with
Good
her.
morning, Anne. Good morning, Jiva. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, good morning. I can hear you.
I can hear you too. Morning, Marianne.
Okay, morning.
That's all good. Thank you.
Although I don't think my screen's working, I'm going to log in again. Oh,
Okay,
it's come
Anne.
up.
Good morning, Hannah. Just checking you can hear us okay.
Good morning. Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the March Cairngorms National Park Authority Planning Committee meeting. For those members of the public joining us today, either virtually or in person, I am Chris Beattie, the convener of the Cairngorms National Park Planning Committee. Today's meeting will also be streamed live on the @the-Cairngorms YouTube channel. So before we go any further, I'm going to ask the clerk to the board to run a roll call.
Thank you, convener. I will now start the roll call. Chris Beattie,
Yeah, good morning.
Jiva Blackett,
Yes, good morning.
Sandy Bremner,
Good morning, here.
Pete Cosgrove,
Good morning, here.
Kenny Deans,
Good morning.
Paul Gibb,
Here.
Hannah Grist,
Morning.
Russell Jones,
Good morning.
John Kirk,
Morning.
Bill Lowen.
Yeah.
Lauren McCallum is joining us after item 5. Eleanor McIntosh. Hello. Duncan Miller.
Here.
Zander McDade.
Good morning, President.
Fiona McLean.
Morning.
Anne Ross.
Good morning.
Derek Ross.
Here.
And then apologies from Steve Micklewright.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so members, to help move the business forward effectively, can you please keep your questions succinct and to the point and focused firmly on clarification of technical or planning issues. Once we've moved into the discussion phase of an application, it would be helpful if members could indicate at an appropriate point if you're minded to put forward any proposal regarding the officer's recommendations. So for members in the room, please raise your real hand to indicate that you want to speak. And for those joining us online, please raise your virtual hand. Also, for those joining virtually, please make sure your microphones are muted unless you're speaking to reduce feedback. And if a member wishes to pull together an amendment to the board on any of today's items, today a breakout room is available and the details are in your board memo. You will be joined there by Peter Ferguson, who's joined us here from Harper McLeod today. So item 2, apologies. So we've got apologies from Steve Micklewright. And online members, we have Anne Ross, Hannah Grist, Jiva Blackett, and as Marianne mentioned earlier, Lauren's going to be joining us later. So item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members wish to declare an interest on any of the items on the agenda today? And can you please be clear on the item number and the nature of the declaration and whether you will still take part in the item or leave? Any members wish to raise anything there? Nope. Okay, then we'll move on. So item number 4 is the minutes of the previous meeting from the meeting of the 26th of January and matters arising not covered elsewhere. Is the committee content with the accuracy of the minutes? Yeah, okay. Can I assume that the committee is happy to approve these minutes? Yeah, okay, so minutes are approved. Any members wish to raise anything about that at all? No, okay. So I'll take a motion to take the minutes off from our confidential session on the 26th of January at the end of this public session. Okay, are we happy with that? Yeah, that's fine. Right, so first up, we have an item for the application for detailed planning permission 2023 oblique 0399 oblique DET, which is the change of use of land to the beer garden in retrospect at land 45 metres southeast of the Old Bridge Inn, 23 Dalflabour Road, Aviemore. This is going to be introduced by Katie Crerar, our planning officer from Development Management, and the officer's recommendation is to approve subject conditions. Today we have 2 speakers. We have the applicant, Owen Caldwell from the Old Bridge Inn, and we also have an objector, Mr. David Craig. Okay. So we'll start with a presentation from Katie.
Okay. So as Chris has mentioned, this application is for the change of use of land to beer garden at the Old Bridge Inn in Aviemore. Sorry, Katie, could you speak up a bit and maybe bring your mic a little bit closer? I got it on. Right. Is that better? Is that better? Okay. Thank you. Cheers. So as you've obviously all just seen, I'll just go over it quickly again. So the application site comprises a small area of cleared ground which has been used as a car park picnic area, and also is a launch point for people and groups using the River Spey for canoeing, kayaking and other activities. The site has limited vegetation due to its existing use and is contained by woodland to the north and south, the existing road, Dalfaber Road, to the west, and the River Spey to the east. There's a core path running through through the site as well as indicated on the site plan, but just which goes from this access down and along. Oh, there's my. Sorry. The mice. Yeah. So the core path goes from the existing main access straight across and then down to the Spey access point. So this proposal seeks partial retrospective planning permission for the creation of a seasonal beer garden forming part of the Old Bridge Inn restaurant. It'll comprise the erection of an open-sided tent with a bar and picnic benches around all around the site for customers to sit at. So you can see the proposed tent in sort of the south of the site there. There's an existing established access to the site which will remain unaltered, which as can be seen on the plan in line with the access statement. There'll be an unloading and drop-off bay at the existing entrance, which will allow people to park for up to 30 minutes. And in addition, a corridor from the offloading bay to the River Spey access point will be kept free of any picnic benches or other obstacles at all times. There'll be no permanent fixtures or barriers anywhere on the site to maintain continued pedestrian across the site. There's no proposed parking on the site when the beer garden is in operation, other than maintaining the pick-up and drop-off access for vehicles. The Old Bridge Inn will maintain its car park to the northwest of the site, and during the winter months when the beer garden isn't in operation, it can be used for informal parking. So this is just the elevations of the tent. This is the tent. It's a 6 metre by 10.5 metre stretch tent housing it'll house a timber bar. The tent will be open around the sides and the roof will be supported by 12 poles. So so as you've all just seen, I'm just going to flip through a few photos. So this is the existing entrance to the site. That's it, looking southeast across the River Spey. This is the existing adjacent outdoor eating area that's also forms part of the Old Bridge Inn. So, this is the view from the western edge of the site, again towards the River Spey, and you can see the River Spey access point there. This is a view from the centre of the site looking south, so towards where the tent would be located, and the adjacent trees. This is a view from the western edge of the site looking to the north. So again, this area would have picnic benches in it for patrons of the Old Bridge Inn. And this is just a closer view of the River Spey launch point. So in terms of the main considerations for this application, to start with the principle, as mentioned, this proposal does not comprise any permanent built development. However, it will enhance the offering and capacity of the existing business during the summer season. Due to the existing established operation, which already has both inside and outside catering and seating, the beer garden won't introduce a new or incompatible use. The area is already a popular location for visitors and residents visiting the Old Bridge Inn and staying in the nearby accommodation, as well as canoeists, river users accessing the Spey access point. This already creates a degree of existing disturbance on the site, and as such the proposal would not result in any unacceptable additional environmental or amenity impacts. As the proposal is considered to be compatible with the existing business activity in its immediate surroundings and will continue to support the vitality of the local economy, the principle of this proposal complies with National Planning Framework Policy 26 Business and Industry and Policy 2 Economic Development of the Local Development Plan. In terms of access, a number of concerns have been raised about the impact of the proposal on the access point to the River Spey. However, as set out, the access statement does address the key issues affecting access to and on the site, specifically around the provision of vehicles to drop off and load, and for signage and the commitment to provide a clear corridor through the seating area for water users to reach the river. Overall, with the provisions set out in the access statement, it's considered that the proposal can operate whilst ensuring continued access for members of the public crossing the site and for river users. Therefore, it's considered that the proposal meets the relevant requirements of Policy 3 of the Local Development Plan. Traffic and parking. Again, concerns were raised about the impact of the proposal on parking and traffic along Dalfaba Road on the basis that it will be compounded by the loss of parking on the site. Whilst these concerns are noted, the Highland Council's transport planning team do not consider that the formalisation of the beer garden will have any additional adverse impacts on Dalfaba Road. The Old Bridge Inn will maintain their car park on the west side of Dalfaba Road for their own customers, and the wider parking concerns cannot be addressed by this planning application on the basis that the car parking for visitors to the beer garden will continue to be provided across the road, and the pressures on Dalfaba Road are cumulative. In addition, whilst not located within Aviemores town centre, the Old Bridge Inn is within close walking distance of it, as well as being well connected in terms of active travel with surrounding core paths and the cycle network. Cycle parking is available at the Old Bridge Inn, and as such, the sustainable transport links on the site also can be utilised by visitors. So overall, it's considered that there's adequate access and parking provision for this proposal, and as such complies with Policy 3 design and placemaking of the Local Development Plan. In terms of flooding, both SEPA and the Highland Council's flood risk management team acknowledged that the whole site lies within the floodplain of the River Spey. Both consultees were satisfied that the use of the space as a beer garden is ancillary to the existing Old Bridge Inn and doesn't include any new buildings or hard standing, and that the proposed structures are all temporary, movable, and would not impede the flow of floodwater or result in the loss of floodplain capacity. As such, they did not object to the proposal. However, the Highland Council have requested that a flood evacuation plan is put in place, and we have conditioned this. Finally, environmental impact. The application site lies adjacent to the River Spey, which is a special area of conservation and a site of special scientific interest. However, as noted by CMP's ecology advisor, it is already subject to frequent disturbance, and with very little ground vegetation, the potential for impact on species breeding birds is low. It was noted that given there's no proposed construction or excavation, pollution of the River Spey is unlikely. However, all built elements of the proposal should remain more than 10 metres from the edge of the river. As such, a condition has been included to ensure that there are no structures within 10 metres of the river, and an informative has been included regarding bat and bird boxes as potential biodiversity enhancement. However, overall, the proposal will not result in any adverse environmental impacts and complies with the provisions of NPF 4 Policy 4 and Local Development Plan Policy 4 Natural Heritage. So overall, this proposal to create a seasonal beer garden will not result in any adverse impacts or would be contrary to the relevant local and national policy provisions in respect of all these considerations. Therefore, it is recommended that the application is approved subject to the appropriate planning conditions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Do we have any questions of clarity for Katie? We've got Bill. Anyone else?
Katie, did the Highland Council Transport Planning Team comment on the use of the area for access by vehicles, or did they just consider as a beer garden?
I think their response would have been just to the proposal of it as a beer garden.
Thank you. No one online and no further questions in the room. So the next we'll have a presentation from Mr. Owen Caldwell, the applicant. Mr. Caldwell, if you'd like to take a seat there. If you pull the mic a little bit closer to you, just to make sure that everyone at home can hear. And you have to press the button as well. Okay, Mr. Caldwell, you have 10 minutes.
Great, thank you. Thanks for your time today, everyone. Thanks for your consideration up until this point as well. I think Katie summed it up pretty well, so I won't go into too much of that detail again. But to summarise, what we're hoping to do is, and I think we've tested this now that this is a retrospective application, is to keep offering a space which isn't really available elsewhere in the local area. A place where families can come together in the summer, kids can play freely in a really natural environment, and as I say, parents can have that space which, as a father of a young child myself, I know it's quite hard to find places like that to gather. So I know there's been some discussion about what the benefit of this is, and I would say there's, in my opinion, quite a strong social benefit in that sense. Of course, there's a business angle for us, that it provides us a really good opportunity to increase revenue in a fairly unlabour intensive way, unlike the rest of our operation, which relies quite heavily on chefs and staff and so on, which are becoming ever harder to find. So that padding, the extra space allows us in the summer, really does allow us to keep going through the winter, keep all our staff on. We don't tend to do seasonal contracts. Everybody's full-time, permanent, local people. So we're contributing a lot into that, I feel. In terms of many of the objections that have been raised, I can respect all of the views, and I hope that through hearing them, we've come to some quite good suggestions, solutions, compromises. I feel one thing that possibly Bill was touching on there, that are two things that are being conflated, are our application to be a beer garden and other people's wishes for there to be a car park there. My understanding is that space is not designated as a car park at the moment. It has been used informally. For that to be an official car park managed in any proper sense is a whole job in itself. In recent years, particularly since COVID, the boom in mobile homes, camper vans has been huge, and it only takes 2 mobile homes turning up there at any time to then render the rest of the site completely inaccessible for anyone. So I'm not sure the benefit of having that as a free roaming car park is as great as some might suggest. Indeed, I think by the creation of the loading bay that we're suggesting, it actually enshrines access for river users in a way that without this new plan, it doesn't really exist. It would mean that we could promote that guaranteed access for people that they could always pick up and drop off. And I think we could build our business and the river offering together in a really interesting and quite iconic way, to be honest. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much what I would like to add.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions? Eleanor?
Aye, thanks. You've obviously got a good, well-established business there. My query is, there's an access plan being submitted by yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see yourself being able to police that? You know, keep that loading bay area free, or restrict the stopping off time to half an hour at a time? You know, you've already said your staff are busy. This is sort of an area where it's less labour intensive. I just wonder how all that's going to fit together.
Sure, yeah, fair point. I mean, in the sense of it being hard for us to manage that space as things stand, the 24-hour nature of the access till this point, you know, has made it incredibly difficult. People arrive early in the morning or late at night. We can't do anything about that. While the beer garden would be open, you know, we are staffed at that point. So we always do have staff on site, and if there are people out there using that space, then we will. And part of our licensing plan, which was accepted, was that if there's over 100 people out there, we would have to have a full-time member of staff out there. So it would take a while to get to 100 people, of course, most of the time. But just by means of us going out and clearing glasses and so on, there would be a pretty constant presence. In terms of more solid infrastructure, exactly how we set aside that loading bay, I'm not 100% sure on yet, whether that's parking cones or it's, you know, some sort of wooden structure. I'm certainly open to input, but it would be quite apparent that that bay, that space was for that, and there would be signage at that entrance point as well, which would reinforce that. So I think, hopefully, with the combination of our staffing and the signage, as well as notices on our website to kind of promote that exact use, it would be fairly well managed for those means.
Russell.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, Owen. Just a question. Who actually owns the ground?
Seafield Estate.
And you have a lease of it from them? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any further questions in the room? Yeah, Kenny.
Hi, yes, thank you for that. You mentioned licensing there. I just wondered, in terms of the license, is the license granted for a number of covers or a number of people or a number of, how would that work? Could you explain, please?
Yeah, of course. That space we won't serve food in. So the food, the wooden shelter that you saw, we do serve food in there, but the area below, we won't serve any food in there. The licensing board have set a capacity of 300 people as a maximum in that space, which, I mean, is not a number that I would foresee happening often, but that is the cap that's been set.
Okay, Paul, you've got a question?
Yep, thank you. So we have a diagram on page 47 which has a blue line, and the red line is the area that we're considering. Is the blue line the extent of the lease that you have? And the second question is, how many vehicles, say last year, entered the site for the purpose of dropping off canoes or other equipment? And through that lease, do they have the right to do that? It is their right to do that within the lease. Thank you.
I don't have I don't have the diagram in front of me that you're referring to, but I'll come back to that in a second. In terms of rights to access, that is covered by the Outdoor Access Code, which is pedestrian access. There's no vehicular right to access that space, which we're leasing privately. So it's been, at our grace until this point, really. I don't know about numbers that would have accessed that. I'm afraid I couldn't really say. Okay, great. Yes. So the blue line is indeed our leased footprint. That's right.
Are you happy, Paul? Okay. Right. Do we have any other further questions? No one online? No. Okay. Right. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
So our next presentation is from Mr. Dave Craig, who's objecting to the proposal. Mr. Craig. Right. So, Mr. Craig, if you press the button on the right-hand side, your mic will come on, and you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to speak this morning. Also, thank you for being in attendance at the site meeting. I'm here this morning both as someone who runs a water sports business on the Spey and the Spey side, but I'm also here as a resident of Badenarchy, a long-term resident who has a love for the area, a particular passion for the River Spey, as most will know, and also I try to promote the Spey and the Spey side as much as I can, and that includes, if it's not a bumptious thing to say, I've been invited by various television companies to get on the river and be in television, and I feel I do promote this area in quite a large way based on my passion for the area. If those who don't know me, I am David Craig, and I run a company called Spirit of the Spey. I have been in the area since 1976. I worked 25 years at Lagan Outdoor Centre, so I've been involved in outdoor education. I tried to support the park as much as possible. I was 6 years in the Local Access Forum, but at the moment I'm finding it very hard to support the park. I would say there's parts of this application I find quite appalling. I think you've done very well in writing a very smooth talking cover up. It's covering up cracks. In fact, I'd even go as far as to say that it's actually covering up, it's trying to cover up big chasms. There's lots of chasms still in this application. Up until probably, I would say 2017, we obviously had a very good relationship with the lessees of the Old Bridge Inn. And I think one of the things that's not realised is the actual magnitude of the numbers of boats that do launch at this site. One of the things that makes me sad also about the national park is that I've lobbied the park for years to try and help us with access. The Spey is a core path within the national park, and there are very few places that we can actually rock up to with, and as I think, Eleanor pointed out this morning, they're not small vehicles. They're usually at least a van or a minibus with a sizable trailer. And at the moment, there's difficulty. There are very few access points. The best access point in the Spey just now, just for your interest, is Botagarten, where we were actually consulted as what we would want there, and there's decent access down under the bridge. There's no other access point between Botagarten and Kincraig. So if this access point is lost, which we are doing, we're losing it. We've lost it since probably 2019. Oh, sorry, I meant to actually just highlight that. Yes, so I think what I'm saying here is almost the skeleton of my presentation. And what I say on there, it's part of the chasm is dangerous parking, and it's again that's something that's been papered over, and it's going to be exacerbated by the formal use. Now, Owen is saying that it's been going on well enough for a while, but it hasn't been. This morning at the meeting at the riverbank, there was suggestion that, well, yes, it's been happening, but there are people who are no longer coming to launch at Aviemore because they just can't get access. They can't get down to the river, they can't get parked, and whereas if we went back to what we had before, it all worked. And Owen was talking about management of it. It wasn't managed. I think I would take his point on motorhomes. We probably need to have some control on that. So there could be some sort of bar on motorhomes going down. The other thing to consider is that if someone was doing a journey from Kincraig to Aviemore, we're journeying all the time, so you tend to need to leave your vehicle at the far end, so you do a shuttle. We used to just leave our vehicles somewhere around the Old Bridge Inn, and if there was no room in the car park, then you'd park that vehicle on the road. But at the moment, there's no credence been given at all to the outdoor fraternity. And, you're talking about space for maybe one trailer and one minibus or whatever to park in this loading bay, and 30 minutes is totally unreasonable. I think one of my sadnesses here is that clearly the applicant and also even the access people in the park don't realise the magnitude of the vehicles and the trailers, and they don't realise just quite how long it takes to unload all the kit that's required. And so the whole thing just now is totally unrealistic, and this is what I mean by a chasm. There seems to be a complete misunderstanding. Outdoor tourism in Scotland now, at a conservative estimate, brings in £85 million to Scottish economy, and we're part of that. And at the moment, I feel we're not respected at all, and I link this back to here again, we're losing out. We're the ones that are losing. I would go as far as to say that if you were to approve this application, and this might sound a bit silly, but I really mean this, it would almost be like a reverse Robin Hood. What you're doing is you're actually stealing from the public a very adequate, or prior to COVID certainly, a very adequate parking area, which allowed for access. It allowed for families to be there, because it was a public access area. And so that, and now you have a corridor is completely unreal. And as people realised this morning, I've just pointed out with some members, to reverse a trailer, I'm pretty good in my trailer, but to reverse a trailer and a van onto that, the ramp already is quite difficult. I mean, I was even thinking about at one stage, had we still been in good terms with the whole thing here, that we actually got money from the SC to actually raise the ramp, because the ramp, is, even as it is very untenable. So to try and park there and unload boats, and the fact is, as well, is there could be 3 different groups turning up at around the same sort of time. And that's us. And because there are no other access points locally, then it's a honeypot. And if you approve this, you're taking away from us a honeypot, and it's a honeypot that's at the moment providing employment, bringing money to the area for a whole raft of people. And what I was going to say was, it's like the reverse of Robin Hood, in that you're robbing the people of a public amenity, which could be a lovely area like it was before, and you're robbing it from them and giving it to one business. And it's already a successful business, Old Bridge Inn. I used to use it, and so you're giving it to them, and they've already got a successful business here. There are many watering holes in Aviemore. We really don't need more. I remember, to me, the rot set in when this turned up, the sign at the right-hand side there. And this, to me, is very indicative of the attitude I found from the Old Bridge Inn. I went in last year and asked them, when I heard they'd been given 300 extra covers, I was absolutely appalled. And I went to see the bar manager at that time, and I said, what are you doing with parking? Oh, nothing to do with us. And this sign here, to me, is very indicative of what we have in the Old Bridge Inn. It's all about them. It's complete selfishness. Owen talks about compromise and so on, but there's no sign of that. And I think what they're suggesting in this application is, as I said before, taking away a public amenity. This must be about, I think, 2018 or so. I did send that photograph to National Park, and thankfully the park did act in that and asked them to move it. But the thing is that...
Mr. Craig, can I say you've got 1 minute left?
Okay, well, thank you. The other thing appalling is, how can you actually have the Highland transport section saying it's not a hazard? That's probably kind of midsummer. This is right up to the underpass at the end of the road. You can see Old Bridge in front there. This is, again, there's some canoeists who, that's one vehicle's turned up, even they can't get into the car park. And that's just simple canoeists arriving. This is a February scene, so it's not just midsummer, this is February. And there you are there again at the different. One day I was coming up there and in my trailer, and a car was here coming down their way, and he was pointing for me to go back. And I couldn't go back to the trailer on. And in the end, 3 vehicles had reversed onto the main ski road because of all this debacle here. And they had to reverse onto it. It's hard enough getting here. And okay, you're talking about this access here. This has happened for ages. I've actually caught my canoe carried on my shoulders and these flags and lights there. And this idea of a corridor here is terrible. For me, the thing that needs to be done here, I know it's not part of your planning thing, this needs to be a community facility. You might think about, the park might think about taking the lease away from the Old Bridge Inn.
Sorry, Mr. Craig,
still give them the rear garden,
stop you there,
but make it a community facility.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Craig. Do committee members have any questions? We've got Eleanor, we've got Xander, and we've got Bill. Eleanor.
Yeah. Mr. Craig, I think you must convey your points well, but the Bridge Inn, as I understand it, are actually paying a lease for that area ground from Seafield, I think. So I'm not sure how you can really claim it's a public amenity.
Well, it worked so well before with the previous owners, and I think there is need for compromise. But my suggestion at the end is that it shouldn't be left with the Old Bridge Inn. They should still have maybe their beer garden down there. I think if it was bought over, or if the lease was taken over by, say, the Aviemore Community Trust, for example, then that could make it all right. But I think the main thing is how you do that is beyond me. But it needs to be reinstated as the car park. I mean, you saw that debacle there with.
Thank you, Xander.
Thank you very much for your presentation. As Eleanor says, you conveyed your points, although I agree with what Eleanor was saying in terms of, obviously, Old Bridge Inn do lease it, and therefore, it's for their business use, as it were. But what I was interested in, you were saying that there isn't a lot of good access points at the moment on the Spey, and the best ones at Boat of Garton. And I'm just wondering if you, as an outdoor business, and perhaps some of your fellow outdoor businesses have looked at trying to take over a lease or buy a bit of access to do exactly what you were outlining at the end there, to create a proper launching space with the parking, etc. I'm wondering if that's something you've explored in the last few years.
We haven't had to do that because there's just been cooperation, because the realisation that this was what we needed to do, and it's almost a tradition. I know the access legislation doesn't extend to vehicle access, but there's always been cooperation. But certainly the corridor that's being provided just now is totally unworkable. Totally unworkable. Katie this morning mentioned there would be no turning space. Well, there needs to be at least a turning space if it was going to happen. But I think the key thing here is, in keeping what you're saying, that really if we don't get better access to that area, and certainly I discussed this morning with a member of the Aviemore Community Council that the Scottish Canoe Association, I'm sure, would be happy to pay part of their lease because they've got the ground. I thought it was actually included within the blue line there, but certainly part of that is part of the Aviemore Community Trust. So I'm sure the Canoe Association, because it's such a key area, would actually be happy to pay for part of that. So we could actually, that's the sort of thing we do. In fact, the other difficulty is, I think, that when there is a change of use like this, which is taking access away from a key access area which has got fairly intensive use, then before this, if this application was to be approved, before you do that, you'd need to actually liaise with the stakeholders, which would be mainly the Scottish Canoe Association, because this is a change of use and it's going to block access. And okay, there needs to be, again, continued compromise and cooperation, but I think if it could be arranged that, say, part of the lease was taken over, I'm sure the SC would pay that. They do it at Grantley, for example, and so we would be happy to do that because it's such a key area.
Yeah, funnily enough, Grantley's in my local patch, actually, so I know the SCA
Right.
set up there very well, which is what was making me think of it. Is it possible for us to get the area map on with the blue lines, just so we can understand the area that is potentially available for it's being outlined? I think that would just be helpful from my own point of view.
Showed earlier.
But yeah, just so we can get can you just explain to us where it is that there is currently you were outlining the Aviemore?
Sorry, didn't catch that, Xander. Sorry.
So you were asking,
Well, the
you
Community
outlined where
Trust.
the Community Trust has access. Could you just outline to us where that is on that?
My understanding actually is I'm surprised that the blue line continues there, because Jenny was with Alistair was this morning. He was saying that the actual path where it says path with after it, that's actually part of the Community Trust, and they also have everything along the riverbank where the core path runs. They certainly got that. They actually, where the actual access point is, they have that, and I think they have it all the way up to the footbridge beside the river, because they have thought at times of bringing it off their path off the footbridge and along the side of the river there. So I'm really surprised to see how big according to what the member of the Aviemore Community Council was saying this morning, I'm surprised to see the blue line is so extensive.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bill next, followed by Russell.
Mr. Craig, could you tell me roughly how many vehicles with trailers and I suppose how many canoes would visit the site during the average year? Just a guess.
It would be a guess. That's very hard to say. I would say what I would say to preface that is that it's far less than it was since 2019, because people just, a lot of university groups come up, for example, and they're just finding that if they get there, they can't get parked. They can't even walk in their boats as it has been. And okay, the corridor would maybe negate that to some extent. But in terms of numbers, I mean, I've been there on one day when there were 6 different organisations launching there. You've got people like Active Outdoors, you've got G2, you've got Loch Inch, you've got. I mean, I actually use this site very little because most of my work is below Granton. But a lot of these local organisations. In your element, they could all be there on the same day. So you could have 4 or 5 or 6 launching for the same day. The thing is that we appear to be quite non-existent because we tend to sort of work fairly quietly. We're on the river quietly and so on. But when we, in transporting vehicles, we are quite large. We're vans, we're trailers. I mean, you do the shuttle thing and so on. But yeah, so that we are bringing lots of money into the economy and employing lots of people and giving people a really nice time in the national park and meeting, I would say, all 4 key issues of National Park.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I can't give you numbers, Bill.
Right. Russell, followed by Jiva.
Yeah, thank you. You were saying that you think there's a lack of understanding about what's actually entailed in, a large vehicle with a trailer and launching. In the ideal world, and as you say, when there was good cooperation, how would you approach to launch there with a transit, with a trailer on? How would you go about that?
You would go down the ramp, and then you would tend to swing your vehicle over to the left. You may have noticed some glasses on the table today. You see that? There's some. Yeah. So we'd sort of go in that direction and then reverse the trailer back to where the bollards are now, and then you'd unload over the bollard. Well, the bollards were only there quite recently, but you didn't just launch into that area there. And as the last picture was starting to show there, you'd have seen the canoes lined along there. And I don't know if I'll be allowed to bring that last picture of mine back up, but you'll see the magnitude of the thing. But that's what you do. You get over the ramp, you go in that direction, and then you reverse in and you unload into the actual area from there.
Yeah. So just to be clear, you would leave the public road head first, down, reverse, and then you would rejoin the public road head first.
Yeah, well, I think you need to do that. And that's the other thing. If it was a corridor, which I still would say is totally unworkable, then you would have to reverse in. And as I started to say quite this morning, that's really, I'm quite good in my trailer, but I would find that, I think as Eleanor was suggesting, I would find that very difficult. And you couldn't go head first in that way because it's illegal to reverse onto a road. It's part of the highway code, and so you need to then be reversing in. But the thing is that, the suggestion was even, I think Katie was trying to describe that you'd take your vehicle up in front of the wooden shack thunder, and then you'd reverse in. But you've got people standing on the pavement, especially because there's actually barrels on the pavement, which I think is a bit of a thing as well. So the public would be out there at the tables, and you're then having to get your vehicle right beside public drinking at the side of the roadside, and then to actually swing it round. And I think even Stuart said that you'd have to actually bring your nose out and bring it round. It's almost impossible. The idea at the moment is totally unworkable.
Okay, thank you. Jiva, you had your hand up. Do you still want to ask a question?
Well, yeah, kind of. Sorry, you have to excuse me because I think I might be losing my voice. It's a bit daft, Lassie, but if we went with your suggestion that we refuse this, can you help me with what policies we'd be using to do that, please?
Sorry, I'm not. Is that the question to me?
It is a question to you, but I don't think you would be able to answer that.
I couldn't. I think that would be up to the park or the local authority or something to actually deal with that. But again, that's the sort of thing that, as I alluded to, that is in a land reform legislation, there is a requirement for when there's a change of use and an access is being blocked, and this is a blocking of access quite clearly. It's okay. I concede it was all based on cooperation and so on previously, but it's being used and it's now blocking the access. So there would be a need to negotiate with the stakeholders before any decision can be made, and there'd have to be some sort of negotiation there, which would then bring some sort of plan, and that's when things like could be decided, like when the SCA could put money into it, how much it would put in, and that sort of thing. So it would need to be, that'd be a long-term kind of thing to get that sorted. So I think if that's not allowed, even if we had a deferment of this so that these sort of things could be looked at, then that could be done. But I think to approve it today on the basis of what it is would be totally wrong.
Okay,
that's
thank you.
Clarified that. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Kenny, you've got a question.
Yeah, I did make a kind of observation this morning, and I feel the same again when the planning access officer suggested that we've addressed the access issues, and the conversation in the last half an hour shows I'm not sure if we can sustainably hold that position. Although my question is from one of the slides that Mr. Craig showed, Can I ask the Old Bridge Inn, what was what purpose of the signage that was put up regarding river users?
Yes. Sorry, Kenny, that's not relevant to this.
Is that not relevant? Okay.
Well, I could probably answer it. It was a case of they didn't what they said was no parking for canoes. When I noticed this morning, there's actually a sign saying that you've got to ask permission to launch to park.
Thank you very much. John, you have a question.
This is a shame that this can't work for everybody, and I don't know whether, you know, a double junction could be put in further up to make a sort of U-turn. So
yeah, that's
is that not?
No, that's
no.
not.
I know, but you know, it's maybe the way forward.
Derek.
Sorry, Chair. This is getting a little bit out of control. We've got people referring to comments they made this morning. We shouldn't be making comments at a site visit. We have the objector referring to Eleanor having made comments. I think Eleanor was asking a question. Eleanor wasn't making a comment. No, and I think that needs to be... we've got Russell referring to good cooperation. We have no evidence that there is no good cooperation here, Russell. So I think we're muddying the waters here. So let's get back onto the application. And I think we've strayed off the application. I think, Chair, I think the objector's had enough time now and is starting to make his comments over and over again to us. So if we could get back onto the application, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Derek. Okay, so are there any points that Katie wants to respond to?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. Now, we also have the access officer here today, if anyone wishes to ask a question of him. So we've got Eleanor, and then Fiona, and then Peter, and Xander.
Okay, Adam, you've heard all that, and yet your report says that you're satisfied with access. I have got real concerns because we as a park authority agreed that the River Spey would be a core path. I think the first and probably, I don't know if it's still the only river in Scotland to be a core path. But do you remain convinced that we're taking that core path aspect seriously and providing the canoeists with reasonable access?
Thank you, Eleanor. So, yes, I think there's a couple of things I'd like to clarify first. So, if the planning committee chose to approve this application, then effectively a change of use would suspend access rights within that site. So access rights wouldn't apply to that area. However, given there is a core path in that location that has been designated prior to this application going in, then access rights would apply to the core path. And therefore we would, as far as we're concerned, in terms of retaining and protecting the use of the core path, then the access statement as provided by the applicant does adequately do that. But I would want to clarify that in terms of the wider area, if permission was granted, then access rights would only apply to that route going through the site.
So that really bothers me a bit, because how would a canoeist then access the site? That would mean that he technically would have to be prepared to carry his canoe from off-site down the core path.
Well, that happens already at numerous access and egress points on the River Spey. It's 20 metres from the drop-off point to the bollards, or the most common point at which people put onto the river. It's not unrealistic to expect canoeists, kayakers and paddleboarders to portage or carry their craft to the water's edge. That already occurs at numerous access and egress points on the Spey. And, with parking at times quite significantly far away from the river's edge and people having to cross public roads and the like. So, from our point of view, it's not an unreasonable distance for people to have to carry their crafts from their vehicles to the point at which they want to access the river.
But would you not agree that we're downgrading that access?
I think we would recognise that the informal arrangements that were there before, perhaps allowed for vehicles to be parked closer to the river, but we don't think that it's necessarily a significant impact on that, given the short distances that people would have to carry their canoes or their kayaks or their paddleboards.
Okay, thank you, Fiona.
Right, thank you, Adam. I heard this morning that according to the Outdoor Access Code, there is currently pedestrian access to that site is allowed, but there is no right to access by vehicles, which by implication then means that vehicles currently accessing that site don't actually have a right to enter and turn in that area. Is that correct?
That would be our position, yes, that given it is not a formal car park in the sense that it's been granted planning permission as a formal car park and is managed as such and subject to business rates and the like, then parking to date has been through some kind of informal permission or, has been largely tolerated. But the landowner and by extension the leaseholder could remove that parking permission at any time.
Okay, thank you. Zander.
Thanks. I want to just pick up where I had questioned earlier in terms of the objector around if there has been any exploration around having a more official access point. So as Access Authority, have we been involved in any discussions around having a more formalised set of arrangements in this area?
And we have met with colleagues of the Scottish Canoe Association to discuss a number of issues on a number of different access and egress points on the Spey. We did seek to tender a contract this financial year for a consultant to look at all of the access egress points on the River Spey for the opportunities and the constraints, in particular to focus on things like improving accessibility for disabled people or identifying locations where that would be the case, but also addressing some of the community concerns about things like toileting and the like in other kind of locations. And it would be our intention to re-tender that work this coming year with a view to hopefully securing a contractor that would then look at all of the access and egress points in the park at the opportunities and constraints.
Sorry, if I can just follow up. So just based on what you said, we didn't manage to tender then this year. We had hoped to, but we haven't managed to.
That is correct. It went out to tender, but no one submitted any. We didn't get any submissions on that.
Okay, thank you. Peter.
Mine was the question slightly touched on just there, but about are there any implications here for all abilities access along the core path with this development? Is it going to interfere with access for people who don't otherwise find it easy to access a site? Is it currently used, for example, people with disabilities driving down to the river to access the site there? I just get some idea about whether we have to consider that side of things.
I don't have that information. There are a number of providers in the park that do provide for people with disabilities. Equal Adventure being an example of one of those. And there's another company that's, sorry, can't quite remember at the moment. Able to Adventure, sorry, that's the right one. So I suspect that they have identified locations that they can get access to the river for their clients, but I don't know if this is one that they use.
Okay, thank you. And Russell.
Yeah, thanks. Adam, you said there was numerous access points to the Spey. I was under the impression that there aren't really numerous access points to the Spey to launch a boat in our area.
Close to Aviemore, there are. This is the main access point within Aviemore, but people do also access at the Fisherman's Park car park occasionally near the Dalfabba Golf Course. But yes, this would be the principal access and egress point for the Spey for Aviemore. Upriver, the next obvious one is the one at King Craig, and then downriver, the next one, obvious one, is at Botergarten Bridge, adjacent to the sewage works there.
Okay, thank you. Before we move into the discussion phase, can I ask Mr. Craig if you can mind taking your seat, please? Okay, thank you. We're moving into the discussion phase. Bill, do you want to say something?
Yeah, quite clearly, the use of this area as a beer garden is totally incompatible with its use for vehicle access. You know, I remember when this distinguished body gave planning permission to a housing development opposite my house, which requires a new access to be created. And at the time, what we had to do was, and that was with discussions with transport planning, etc., we had to construct a driveway where a vehicle, as in a delivery truck, could enter and exit my drive in forward gear. So it had to come out driving in forward gear, do a U-turn, and come back out in forward gear. It's absolutely completely impossible that we should be actually allowing a vehicle either to drive in and reverse back out, which is just ridiculous, but also you would be asking them to reverse into an area which I think the applicant has already stated will be full of people and children, and you'll be expecting someone to reverse across it. So to me, the two potential uses are completely incompatible. I would also disagree completely with transport planning that there is adequate parking in this area. If you visit there at any time, any busy time during the summer, in fact, even way beyond the summer, you'll find the road is actually choked with vehicles, and the majority of those vehicles are actually using the old bridge in. Well, their patrons are. So I think there are severe problems that go beyond this planning application, which Highland Council will need to satisfy. The idea that we can ban parking, or the developer can ban parking outside on the public highway outside a particular part of their premises, is absolutely ludicrous and illegal. So it will those parts will be for Highland Council to decide on. I'm more than happy to listen to the remainder of the debate, but it's likely I will be making a proposal at the end.
Thank you, Derek. Sorry, Bill. Derek, you're next.
I mean, I know the area and I've known it for years, as many of us have, and it has been ever thus that it's been choked with parking. It was choked with parking in the 70s, with 80s, and the 90s. I don't think this development's going to make it any worse. Someone said you can't. It's illegal to reverse onto a road. It's illegal to a main road. This isn't a main road. It doesn't go anywhere, the road. It's a dead end, so it's not a main road. I see where people are coming from. I see that, but what's happening? We have to deal in realities. What do you want to do, Bill? Close down the old bridge end because people can't park there. We've got a business here that, you know, that we want to succeed within the park.
Bill, would you like to
trying to expand?
Can I just come back for a second? Well, on one particular point, the old bridge end did not cause any traffic problems in the 1970s because the old bridge end did not open until the mid-80s.
Okay. I beg to differ. I think it doesn't matter.
Derek, stop you there. Xander, do you want to come?
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask officers a point I was hoping to ask it before we went into debate, but if I can ask it now around, so one of the things that sort of been touched on by Bill, but also when we were questioning, the fact that we haven't got specifics around the demarcation of the access point, whatever we're going to call it, and and the applicant said that they were open to discussion around how that might be demarcated. And I would be interested in knowing whether we can add a condition around the specifics of how that would be demarcated, which I think would be a reasonable condition, because I think that's quite important given the discussion we're having. So just getting a bit of clarity from Katie and Gavin and Peter perhaps as to whether that's something that we can reasonably apply.
It would be possible to seek extra information on the details of how that would be marked out. I don't think that addresses members' concerns about the space that will be available, because you could see from where we were, it's a strip of land from the road down into the site, so it doesn't create a large turning area within the site that other operators with bigger vehicles and trailers would want to give them the kind of vehicle access that they would like.
No, I appreciate that it only answers one part of the problem, but I just wanted clarity on whether we could condition that, and perhaps whether that condition allows an opportunity as well for us as planning authority with the applicant and with others to discuss how that arrangement is going to be laid out, physically.
Yes, it would do, but I think there's some of the impression that I get that some members would like, and certainly objectors would like, is a great deal more of the space to be exclusively for the use of activity providers, basically, in order to bring their vehicles on site and potentially leave them there as well. And that's quite a different that's a different thing to what the applicant has made his planning application just now.
No, I appreciate that, and I'm trying to get to somewhere that might be a common ground between all parties here, and also just from my own point of view, I would like to know that if we were to approve this, that there is going to be, for example, a much more physical barrier where you're not going to have people and children or whatever going into the path of moving vehicles, particularly reversing ones. So that's that's where I'm heading with my request around a condition.
So I think Bill's point about the conflict between vehicles and a beer garden is just fact about those two different things. So as soon as the two meet, then there is potential for that conflict, which would be down to the applicant to manage that risk on the site. Having my own observation from what people have said, would be that it would be most sensible if anyone was wanting to access the site that they simply stopped on the road, unloaded, and then moved on from there, rather than tried to reverse into that area. There might be a site where they could put their canoes or kayaks or whatever other equipment they had there, and then they would drive on somewhere else, rather than trying to what would probably become more complicated for them in trying to access into the site.
Can I just add something that also in terms of you're just talking about the potential, like some form of barrier or something. I think it was intended, or the application sort of purposefully didn't include that, and I think Access were kind of supportive of that, because not to affect the kind of people's access across the site as well. So the idea that it would keeping the corridor, or for the onloading or offloading, and would not be kind of you wouldn't have an area that other people couldn't access. People can trying to maintain access across the site. But again, I guess that's open to your discussion.
Before we move on to Paul, Peter, do you have a clarification?
Yeah, it's not a clarification as such, but it's really to try to draw some of the strands together. In terms of policy 3.3i, there's a requirement that development proposals, H, there's a requirement that all development proposals maintain and maximise all opportunities for responsible outdoor access. However, outdoor access for these purposes, as has been explained, does not give rise to a right to vehicular access. So that's really the context to this particular policy. However, when it comes to if this had been a development proposal where the patrons of the development would be parking in this, and there were proposed arrangements for reversing and so on, as discussed, that would clearly be a relevant consideration. The difficulty here is that the proposed parking reversing arrangements are more in the way of mitigation of not impact on outdoor access, as we discussed, but impact on existing informal access. So that there is a proposed access strategy, and the criticism, as I've understood it at least, is about a component of that strategy. So I think perhaps a question for clarification from the access officer is whether if there were to be a problem in delivering that component of the access strategy, how if at all would that impact on your assessment? So it's trying to draw those strands together, because it's quite a unique situation that it's not a feature of the development which is in question. It's an impact on something which exists but doesn't exist in the context of the outdoor access.
Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that we have to judge what we have before us, but I would like, just in the course of giving you my thoughts, set out some wider thinking. So the owner of the inn leases the land, and there isn't, as we've heard, a right for vehicles to access that land. And as a business, he would like to use that land that he's paying for to attract more customers and to have a site for additional benches and seats and marquees, and to grow and improve his business. And I can see that. We have another party which is long-standing and requiring access, and it would make great sense for them to get closer and off what is a narrow, small, busy road to unload their canoes. And I think in this application, the owner, the leaseholders of the inn, have gone some way to try and accommodate both. But I'm not entirely sure that it's the right application. I think there's a third party in this, and that's Highland Council. And I think the report here from Highland Council, all 2.5 lines, isn't very good at all. It doesn't reflect very well. It's such a narrow road. It needs a traffic management plan, and that needs to be put in place by the council. It needs passing places on the road so that we don't have situations described where vehicles have to reverse. I think the access to the site as it currently stands, the drop curbs are insufficient. They only cover half of the access. So I would like to support the inn. I think they're trying to find a compromise. I just don't think this plan, this application, offers it. I asked about the blue line. I think, in setting out my thinking, I'm only judging what we're seeing before us, but in just sharing my thinking, the blue line perhaps offers greater area to have some seating for them to grow their business and have more clients. And it's possible that there could be access within the area for vehicles to come in point first and turn and drop vehicles off and depart point first. And I would like the compromise to be found between both parties and the park. But at the moment, I would not be supporting this application as it stands right now.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Could the access officer come back to Peter's comments, please?
Yes, certainly. I think maybe if I've understood you right, Peter, I think notwithstanding, so as part of the access plan, the applicant has identified effectively a 2.5 metre corridor from the vehicle loading and unloading area to effectively the access and egress point, therefore maintaining the core path across that site. If at any time that was to become obstructed through the placement of picnic benches or the like, I suspect there are two things that could happen there. One is whether they would be in contravention of a planning condition, and obviously I'd defer to colleagues on that. But the other is that as the access authority, we would be able to use Section 19 powers, which allow us to do anything we consider appropriate for the purpose of maintaining a core path and keeping a core path free from obstruction. And if we decided not to use Section 19 powers, we would, of course, subject to board approval, then be able to use Section 14 powers in relation to that being an obstruction and pursue that in that direction. So it would be our view that, if at any point in the future that corridor or that route through the development was being obstructed, then we would have tools and the recourse to be able to address that matter fairly quickly.
Thank you. I've got Russell and then Zander.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to agree with what Paul said there. I mean, I would be very, very supportive of the Old Bridge Inn and expanding their business, and wish them well in their business. And it's a great pub in Aviemore and important to Aviemore. However, I feel that this that what we're being asked to approve here today, I don't think that I could approve it. I mean, I think there are very few access points on the River Spey. I mean, we said there was numerous. I don't think there are numerous. There's few access points on the River Spey. I think we're cutting down on an access point here. I mean, you're talking about a 2.5 metre corridor. Officers this morning were telling us that a vehicle could reverse down that. I mean, it's been proved that
different bit. Sorry, the 2.5 metre corridor from that point where the vehicles would access, from the end of that to the river, not the vehicle access strip.
The vehicle access. So how wide does that go?
I'm not entirely sure, but it looks like it's 4 or 5 metres from the plan. I don't have an exact measurement.
Okay, I accept that. The point I was coming to was, I mean, I drive large vehicles for a living quite often, and we were described this morning to do a left-hand reverse with a large trailer, dropping down onto a lower level. I think that's almost impossible. I mean, I hope that some sort of compromise could be reached here between the Old Bridge Inn and the access to the river, but I'm not sure that this is it at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks. I have a few further questions, if you'll indulge me, based on some of the responses we've had. So I think Katie talked earlier when we were on site that the core path route is not what is proposed here, but we're talking about it in the context that we would then be able to apply core path powers on the new proposed route. Is that correct?
I don't think there's an intention that the new route would be a core path. But it will be, again, as part of the application, will be a cleared corridor that will provide access at all times to the site. The actual core path, again, which was put in to provide access to the same point, it takes a slightly different route. But again, that would also be maintained as a core path. It's not actually on the ground marked or anything. It's but that line would also be maintained for people to walk to the Spey area.
You've brought me on to my next question, I suppose, which is, was there any, because it was mentioned earlier about by the objector in terms of struggling at some points due to the busyness of the site and not having a clear path at points. Is there any proposal, and I think you've indicated not, to have even just whatever stones on the ground or whatever to demarcate the clear way, if we can call it that, access point? Is there anything in there?
As mentioned before, there was no intention to have a physical barrier on the basis that to provide a little bit of extra room, and so people could still cross the site with ease. But I don't know if that's something that we could potentially condition, should it be, Gavin? I'm not sure if it's something that we could condition or not.
Can we bring Peter in on this point and Gavin as well?
I was just going to comment. We can have that. We can ask for a way of that being identified. I mean, I think rather than trying to create a lot of lines and infrastructure within the site, it was intended to be that. So I don't think we'd be looking for fences or anything. It's just to be clear where that is. We'd obviously want that, because if we have complaints that it's not there, then in the first place, we'd be using planning enforcement tools to make sure that that was free as we'd given consent for, if it was given consent.
As I understand it, the proposed 2.5 metre corridor follows a different route to the designated core path leading to the SPAE at the moment. So the first question is, to what extent would the development proposals impact on the existing routes of the core path leading to the SPAE? And if there is a risk of impact on those rights, then if permission was to be granted, then some thought would need to be given to diversion of the existing route leading to the SPAE. So that's certainly a relevant consideration. It's one possible way of doing it, if members were minded to approve, would be a pre-commencement condition, which if there was to be an impact, there would be a requirement to secure a diversion of that section of the core path to the proposed corridor.
Okay. Sorry, Chris, can I ask my final quick one? There's been a lot of discussion this morning about poor relations and therefore poor access at the moment, and there's a lot of discussion around the table about not wanting to impact access, but I'm unclear as to whether at the moment people are getting vehicular access or not, because actually some of the pictures we saw earlier indicated they're not. So I'm unclear as to whether this is actually potentially an improvement on the current situation, in the sense that there is some vehicular access, albeit it's not fantastic vehicular access, or whether there is vehicular access at the moment. Katie and Gavin have any clarity on that?
Sorry, I'm not entirely sure what the current access arrangements are. I don't know if we're allowed to revert to the applicant.
I think unless the applicant blocks access, I don't think they go and remove vehicles. So some people will park there at times, I'm sure, and that could be all sorts of people, customers or just other activity providers at times as well. Obviously the owner doesn't have to allow access and may not want to allow access for a variety of reasons as well. So all of the vehicle access to that site that has happened in the past has been informal and not formalised. So it's not a right, it's been a benefit that people have taken.
Derek and then Eleanor.
It was actually on that point. I mean, the applicant leases the land. He doesn't have to give vehicular access, does he? No, just to get that clear. And at present, he's not blocking vehicular access and hasn't in the past. So there must be a level of cooperation from the applicant with people in that respect. Okay, thank you.
Hello.
I agree with Bill, Paul and what Russell have been saying, and as the application currently stands, I can support it. I think the mix of vehicles, kids, people, but also crucially, I think it endangers the core path access. I really do. I'm not convinced that we've got that right, and I think there needs to be more discussion on a way forward in that area. Having said that, I do absolutely see the point of having the beer garden and would love to be able to support it. But I think there needs to be a discussion, and it's maybe pie in the sky thinking, but I would love to see the canoeists, the Old Bridge Inn, the park, and importantly, Highland Council Transport sitting round the table, even if it meant taking in the community aspect as well and having a discussion about a way forward, because there's got to be a way that it'll work for all of those parties, and I really don't think this is it.
Sander.
Sorry, yeah, I have a further question. Are we able to, and I genuinely can't remember the answer to this, are we able to grant the planning for a specific period of time, for example, to allow the discussions to go on, for example, as it were, so that this could continue, but subject to, it's not a deferral, but as in approve the application for a set period of time, as in not indefinitely, not have a permanent application approval.
The application is for permanent planning permission, but if members were so minded, by condition, the permission could be limited in time. Of course, it's seasonal at the moment, but leaving that aside, it could be limited to a period of time from today's date. And one of the usual justifications for a time-limited permission is to assess what the impacts on the ground are, without permanently changing the status quo. So that would be a possibility.
Okay, Fiona.
Just out of interest, who would be responsible for doing that assessment if we were to approve a time limited? You said you would do an assessment would be made, but who would be responsible for doing that assessment?
That's a very good question, and I should have explained. The assessment wouldn't take place within this permission itself. So if, say, and I'm just giving this period, for example, if a 2-year permission was granted, then at the end of the 2 years, the permission comes to an end and nothing further is done within the permission. Any assessment would be part of a follow-on application for either a further temporary or more likely a permanent application at that stage. So an application for a permanent permission to replace a temporary permission would reflect on what has happened during the period of the temporary permission.
Paul.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I probably wouldn't support a time-limited approval because the reason that I would put forward for objection, and I'd like to just highlight again that I think the owners of the inn are looking to find a compromise by putting forward this plan, is I don't think there is safe access, egress, if you're in a caravan, a car with a trailer right now. So I don't think it'll be safe now. It won't be safe for a week. It won't be safe for 2 years. And that would be the reason for my refusal.
Okay, anyone else wish to comment? No. Right, so it's clearly a division there. Do I have a motion to refuse? A motion to approve? Yeah, so there's a breakout room for those wishing to pull together their motion. Where Peter will join. Oh yeah, we need a seconder. So for seconder for Bill's motion to refuse, Paul, and a seconder for Derek's motion to approve. Right. Oh. Right. Okay. Well, could we have a recess just now then?
No, we need a seconder.
Yeah.
We did a seconder.
Okay, so we need a seconder. Yeah.
Please use your mic.
Sorry,
I think this is appropriate because it's a 2-stage process where the motion hasn't yet been articulated. So if Derek was making a fully articulated motion at this stage, then a seconder would need to come on board.
Sorry, I'm wanting to go with the recommendation as printed.
Yeah. So thank you. Your motion to which would be treated as your motion to support the officer's recommendation. But my general point was, but
I have a separate then to Derek. I have a separate motion that I would like to move potentially, which is potentially to approve the thing, but with certain conditions around it. But I would like to discuss those with Peter before formally moving that.
So that would be two separate meetings with you?
Yes. In fact, there doesn't need to be a meeting with. Derek's motion is to approve in accordance with the recommendation. There's no need for further discussion. However, there would be a need for that motion to be seconded. However, for the other two motions, then yes, there would be a breakout on each of those.
So we still need a seconder for Derek's motion. Do we have a seconder for Derek's motion? No.
So there would be two.
Yeah.
Two motions.
So do we have a seconder for Xander's?
No, that would mean that, from my as I would understand it, Peter, what would happen there is that is it Bill that's put forward? Yeah. Bill's one. And there's nothing else come up.
Well,
there is.
Are we?
As an amendment from Xander.
Yes. So if it wasn't for if Bill's was the only motion, then because there isn't a motion in favour of the officer's recommendation, then Bill's motion, as seconded by Paul, would be carried. However, Xander's motion is in effect an amendment to Bill's motion.
Excuse me, I've got my hand up. I did have my hand up in the when we were in the previous session, but it wasn't raised. I would support Derek.
Okay, so do you have a seconder for Derek's motion? Right, okay. So we're clear on that. And
I mean, basically what I'm looking for is two conditions. One that would set out a condition around demarcation of both the access egress point and the what essentially would be the new core path access, and a second one to potentially limit the time around it. But I want to discuss with Peter and Gavin and Katie about that.
Right. Yeah.
So could I just clarify then? What would happen would be the two amendments would be taken against each other.
That's right.
And then the final amendment would be taken, well, the winning amendment would then be taken against Derek's motion.
I believe so, but I want to double check the standing
well.
orders.
Yeah. Fiona.
Do you need a seconder for
Yes.
that? Well, I'll second that then.
Okay. Right. So we're all happy with that. Okay, so we'll have a recess now. Which order do we do this in?
Bill's first.
Bill's first. Yeah. Okay. So I'll have a recess for 15 minutes. Will that be enough?
No,
No?
that's too long.
Yeah.
Is this for the whole thing?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
50.
15 minutes. Yeah.
Given
Bill, the process.
Thank you, Convener. Okay, so there's a motion to approve in accordance with the officer recommendation. There are 2 amendments, and in terms of the standing orders, the 2 amendments are, in effect, there is a runoff between the 2 amendments, and the amendment which succeeds in the first vote will then be treated as an amendment against the motion. So there will be 2 votes, initially on each of the amendments. And for convenience and to avoid any confusion, I would suggest that when it comes to the vote, we describe the amendments as Bill's amendment and Xander's amendment, just to avoid confusions between amendments and motions. Okay. And as Xander made the last amendment, I think it's appropriate for Xander to firstly articulate his amendment and then on to Bill.
Okay, thank you. So it's a fairly simple amendment. It's to add 2 conditions to the officer recommendations. The first of those 2 conditions is to limit the duration of the consent to 2 years, which we think is a reasonable period of time to allow the application to proceed, but also to understand any issues that may arise from that specific consent, and also encourages parties to get around the table and to discuss long-term aspirations. Also, the second condition is that officers are to approve the measures to identify the vehicle, drop-off zone area and pedestrian corridor to the SPAE, so that we have control over what those measures to outline those areas look like, and that will be a condition that is enforceable. So those are the 2 conditions. They are in addition to obviously the conditions that are already applied in the officer recommendation. We think they're reasonable and proportionate, and that they will encourage a long-term solution to this that is suitable for everyone who wishes to use the area.
Okay, thank you, Xander. Bill?
Yeah, it's relatively simple. Despite the potential economic benefit of this development, that it be refused on the grounds that it is contrary to policy 33J of the CNPA Local Development Plan, as it fails to demonstrate that there is an appropriate method of access and egress to the site due to the incompatibility of the use as a beer garden and involving people, and particular children, and vehicular traffic.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, can we now move to the vote?
Thank you, Convener. I will now start the vote. Chris Beattie.
Xander's amendment.
Jiva Blackett.
Xander's amendment.
Sandy Bremner.
Xander's amendment.
Pete Cosgrove.
Xander's amendment.
Kenny Deans. Paul Gibb.
Bill's amendment.
Hannah Grist.
Xander's amendment.
Russell Jones.
Bill's amendment.
John Kirk.
Bill's amendment.
Bill Loban.
Bill's amendment.
Eleanor.
Bill's amendment.
Xander.
Xander's amendment, why not?
Fiona.
Xander's amendment.
Duncan.
Xander's amendment.
Anne Ross.
Motion.
Sorry, Anne, the choice is either Xander's amendment or
Sorry.
Bill's.
Neither then. Abstain.
Derek Ross. Bear with me 1 second. So we have 6 for Bill's amendment, 9 for Xander's amendment, and 1 abstain.
Okay, thank you. So next we test Xander's amendment versus Derek's motion.
Sorry, Chair. With Anne's approval, I'd like to withdraw that and go with Xander's.
Okay, thank you. So
is that possible, Peter? Sure.
we think it should be, but we're not sure, and I think I would rather just follow through on the vote at this point, just in case, just to be clear.
No problem.
So another vote. Yeah, Marianne.
Chris Beattie,
Xander's amendment.
Jiva Blackett,
Sanders.
Sandy Bremner,
Sanders amendment.
Pete Cosgrove,
Xander's amendment.
Kenny Deans,
Sanders amendment.
Abstain.
Hannah Grist,
Amendment.
Russell Jones,
Xander's amendment.
John Kirk,
Sanders.
Phil Loban,
Abstain.
Eleanor McIntosh,
Abstain.
Fiona McLean,
Sanders amendment.
Duncan Miller,
Xander's amendment.
Anne Ross,
Motion.
Derek Ross,
Motion.
bear with me. Two motions, 11 amendments and 3 abstain.
Okay, so with that, the application for detailed plan permission 2023/0399 DET is approved subject to Xander's amendment and the additional conditions. Okay, right, so moving on, we'll move on to item number 6, any other competent business. Gavin, you've got some things to tell us.
Yeah, thank you. The first one that some of you may have heard about, but the Lethen Wind Farm proposal, which is west of Lochendorb or northwest of Lochendorb, just to the north of the national park, that's been refused by Scottish ministers. There were a number of other parties, sorry, I should say the CMPA objected to that. There were a number of other parties objected to that. The refusal of the application isn't related to the CMPA's objection. Ministers and the reporter were satisfied that the impacts weren't significant enough, but they did give a lot of weight to Highland Council's objections on grounds of the impacts on the landscape character area in that part of Highland Council. So that's just to update you on that. Second point is we're looking into some of the arrangements for external lighting at the Tomintoul housing development, following some comments actually from when the board were visiting Tomintoul last week. And on top of that, actually, we're trying to speak to the Dark Skies group there around the process for reapplication and the way that the Dark Skies Park is managed over time as well.
Yeah, I think it was quite unfortunate that was, or maybe fortunate that topic was raised on our visit. Because it made it sound like we weren't giving due regard to the Dark Skies lighting plan. So that's why I asked you to look into it and check that application did have the appropriate conditions on it.
Yes, and as is often these things, it's slightly more complicated than that. So we've actually received complaints that there wasn't external lighting and been told that's because the Park Authority refused to allow any external lighting on the site. But actually what happened at some point in the construction, somebody didn't remember to use the fact that we said that any external lighting would have to be approved through an external lighting management plan. So that's the reason that there aren't many external lights. However, there are some external lights on buildings, and yes, technically they won't comply with the Dark Skies lighting management plan, although they're very dull lights as well. So but technically they wouldn't comply with the Dark Skies lighting management plan.
But why would they not comply when it is in our sign up, if you like, to comply with the Dark Skies lighting plan?
Because they don't have approval for them. So
right, okay.
Yeah. And finally, it's a nice bit of news. The Old School Affordable Housing Project in Ballater has just won another award, this time for the Rural Empty Property Award from the Scottish Empty Homes Conference and Scottish Empty Homes Partnership. And I think nice that it's got an award, and also we definitely want to be taking the planning committee board to see that site this year, so that you can have a look at that. It's now won a number of awards, and it is a great development.
Any other competent business from any members at home? Nope. Anyone else? Nope. Okay, so members, I'm now have a motion to move into our confidential session. I'd be happy to do so.
Sorry, Chris, should we get Lauren?
Oh, yes, let's get Lauren back in. Of course, she's there. Do we have a seat for her? Not yet.
Just 1 second, let me go.